what kind of skilled workers Australia is looking for? Tradies?
There's just not enough people.
But when people come, they don't have jobs.
They dropped the quota by 75% for the 190s and 491s.
Yeah.
They didn't do any picks for 189 for ages, I think.
How they come to know about what is going to be in the trend, and they start guiding the migrants. Happens with you also when people come, okay, I'm left with 2 weeks, I want to do this visa. You clearly know that it is not possible.
The migration industry is becoming a bit more sophisticated.
Don't you think the migration consultants can become really good psychologists also, counselors?
Counsellors.
Girl is studying, guy is working day and night, and the girl say, you are not worthy of me.
I wouldn't be privy to all the private stuff like that. Things have changed a lot in 20 years.
I know people, Matthew, whose spouses cannot interpret even a single sentence of English. Australia is getting smarter immigrants now. Do you think migration industry will have problems in the times to come if they start doing their e-visas themselves?
No, I think we're a long way off that, with everything being that way.
And one day he or she comes and tells you, enough is enough.
That is an incredible question, because I, in my 24 years, have never ever had a person.
But why there is no ranking, first 10 ranking for the Australian universities? I have personal experience, there are very good universities here. Why?
I think it's money.
As Robert Frost once quoted, "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, and I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep." This is the story of every immigrant, no matter which country he or she migrates. Today, in my podcast, I have brought a guest and invited him to talk about his journey navigating people through Australian immigration processes. I hope you're going to like this conversation. Please do comment and let us know how you like it. Okay, let's talk to our today's guest, Mr. Matthew Luscombe. Hello, Matthew.
G'day, Rosna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good.
Matthew, I have a question which people would be very interested to know about. What you used to do before entering into the migration industry?
Right. When I first started, I was working as an international sales manager for a company that was selling land and house packages to internationals, mainly through Greater Asia, and they were tying up visas to house and land packages, because back in those days it was very hard to get a visa to Australia, especially Indians, most probably prior to 2005 found it very, very hard. So from about 2000 to 2007 I was working for that company, and then I realised the demand wasn't for the houses, it was for the visa. So I got my licence and started helping people through the visa and not selling them a house and land package to get a visa.
All right. So you have been in this industry from the past 24 years.
Correct.
And guiding people.
Correct.
Matthew, can I ask you a question on how you draw a comparative analysis of people who used to come to Australia 24 years ago when you entered into this industry and now?
Well, it was most probably originally the people I saw coming were either tied up something with the Australian government, or they were well off, they were wealthy, is the main ones I saw. Whether that was across the board, who knows, but that's what I saw. And when they made it easier to get the visas in about 2007, and that's when all the Indian students started coming, a lot from all across India, mainly Gujarat and Punjab. They were a different cohort of people than you'd see today. I think I always remember reading a great article by, I think it was a Melbourne Indian who'd been living here for years, said in 2007 a lot of the Indians coming into Australia wouldn't have assimilated into Mumbai, let alone Melbourne.
Wow.
which I found quite interesting, an Indian saying that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a different cohort that comes now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good prediction that guy made. Yeah, if we see, lately we have seen a change in the perspective towards Australia among all the countries from where people are migrating for a better lifestyle or better education. Do you see the age change, the rules change, or there is a little more scrutiny on the kind of people that Australia wants? As
Well, it's a
past?
political thing now. I think the latest party in power, I think they feel as though they're going to get blamed for all the housing crisis and everything else on the immigration policy. Whether that's the case or not is another thing. But they're certainly trying to slow the numbers for the time being. And I think with COVID and the pent-up demand, and then a large cohort arriving at the end of COVID hasn't helped. That's made it a lot of people at once, even though it was most probably only the people that were all getting their visas over COVID. But they're certainly trying to slow the numbers. But these rule changes, I don't know what's going to happen with the rule changes. I think certainly with this banning visa hopping,
Yeah.
and that's stopping tourist visas, going for student visas, and stopping 485 holders going for student visas. It's certainly going to change something.
Yeah.
That's going to make it difficult.
Yeah. Other than political inclination, there is nothing else that is making Australia change the rules.
No, I think it's local. It's about votes.
It's
I think
not
the
that-
locals are worried about that they can't get a seat in the train, and there's not enough water, and there's not enough houses. All the infrastructure's not here for all the people that are getting visas. I assume that's their worry.
Yeah.
And what the locals, I don't think, realise is that we make our money out of immigration. Melbourne has very little else except immigration. It has education, it has everything that's made from immigration.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the industry in Australia is making its money out of immigration, so they can't fiddle with it too much. They can't have education wouldn't be the same with that immigration. You can't. They'd charge the locals would have to be paying a lot more for their education.
Yeah.
If we couldn't subsidise it with internationals.
Yeah. And Matthew, how about housing? When you mentioned before education, that is because of the housing, people feel that there will be less infrastructure for them.
Well, there's a lot of articles about how the immigrants are taking
But
the
who's
houses.
going to build those houses for them? If they don't have the migrants here,
That's
who
good
are
point.
building houses?
Yeah, true.
As you mentioned that,
Yeah, true.
Melbourne
True.
stands on the shoulders of migration, right?
Oh, it does. I think it's the second largest contributor to GDP is education. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and what I see, being from one of the largest countries of the world, people migrate to various countries. But if Australia keeps more strict guidelines, and with each passing day the rules change, don't you think that
Nah.
most of the people would be diverted to other countries which have got little lesser regulations?
No.
No.
No, I don't think so.
So Australia is
I'm
superior
Aussie,
now?
so I'm Australian and born and bred, so I suppose I'm biased, but I travelled for 7 years in every single country promoting Australia, and I was just shocked at the demand. Boy, we had to get crowd control in China. The hotels used to come and see us and warn us that the government might come and have a chat to us because too many people were turning up to our little tiny ads in the paper.
Yeah.
And in India we had the same problem. We had to get crowd control when we mentioned that we're here to explain how to come to Australia. I think the demand, I think our wage rates, clean air space is all pretty popular. You know, America's got its issues. England is really clamping down on their visas.
Yep.
And if you've been to London lately, it's pretty crowded.
Yes.
It's very squeezy.
And Matthew, you know, way past when I was thinking myself venturing out of my country, at that time, Australia was not even in the option for
Yeah.
education. So, what do you think has made Australia one of the dream destinations for the people
Yeah, good
who
point.
want to study?
Don't know. I assume it's as simple as we have a pretty good medical system, we have a great wage rate, and it's a pretty good country. I think, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's. I think the education may be a way to get to our wage rates, our medical, and the clean air. I think.
Yeah, clean air, right? Yeah, clean air I can see, but if I have to make a comparative analysis, because you are dealing with migration and education on parallel terms, if I have to make a comparative analysis of the Indian education system and Australian education system, I believe it is more objective. Here, it is very objective system, and most of the education is dependent on technology. Whereas from where we come from, we had a very detailed, subjective way of education, and it's not difficult. Australian education is not difficult. But what makes Indian students, allured towards this education system? Believe me, Matthew, I'm talking from personal experiences. The way the education is being given in the universities, colleges, and schools even is very different here.
I don't know much about the Indian education system. All I've heard from the clients is it's certainly in schools it's far stricter in India than it is here.
It's very comprehensive.
Yeah, it's a lot stricter,
Yeah.
longer hours.
Yeah, by the time we reach class fifth grade, we know half of the history, and we know all entire grammar structure on which the languages are based. We know quite a lot of mathematics, and science starts in primary. And I think here the school education is slower.
Could be. I don't know enough about. All I always think of is most things are run by money, and if your education system's got money, it could possibly be slightly better than somewhere maybe that doesn't have the money to put into the education system, and that might be the difference. I don't know.
That might be the difference.
Yeah.
I'm certainly getting from your talks that people are coming through education to grab the wage rate that Australia has to offer. It's not the education that is alluring them.
Well, there'd be a percentage where the education is alluring them, but it's the whole package, I think. It's everything that Australia has to offer. It's not so much just the education. And I think it helps to be educated in an Australian institution better get a job in Australia.
And Matthew, as we're talking about the migration industry, Australia used to have a very big percentage of seats allocated to global talent or distinguished talent visa, but the scenario is changing now. Do you think Australia has got a lot of global talent now and they don't want people anymore?
No, we don't have enough skilled workers.
Yeah,
you can really see it in the infrastructure projects that all the governments are doing, all the large infrastructure projects. That's sort of taking all the engineers away from the residential market. So there's certainly, there's not enough skilled people here, that's for sure.
Yeah, there are not enough.
Yeah.
But when we talk to people who are here from the past 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, they have fought for their migration status in Australia, still they say we don't have jobs. Australia needs skilled people, but skilled people are jobless. What is that? From where this thing is coming?
I think the definition of a skilled person is, you do need very good English skills to have a job in Australia. Well, I think in any Western country you need very good English skills, because it's all about communication. You can really offend someone pretty quickly if you don't understand the context of English. In an email even, you could offend them. So I think the English is an issue.
For not getting into the job industry?
Correct.
English.
Correct.
So lack of communication skills.
Correct.
Or a little lesser than required communication skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
because every country has their own form of English. You know,
Yep.
Americans speak a different English than we do. The Indians speak a very different English. You know, even the English speak a different English than we do. So
absolutely. I know many people, Matthew, who speak very good Australian English, but they are still driving cabs. And I know people who have veterinary science degrees from India, these Ayurvedic doctors, actual nurses, who are struggling to get into their professions.
Yeah, but I think that's the education system in India, isn't it? And it's also because a lot of our institutions don't recognise that education. So it's very hard to get a job if your education's not recognised.
Yeah.
And with the nursing, it's not. Doctors, it's not. Or not across the board.
Yeah, they have to go through some placements and some transition test, and they have to go through
Well,
English
they have to pass that
requirements.
exam first, and not a lot of my clients pass that exam.
I know many people who have passed those exams, but they were not willing to sit for the English exam, and they were not willing to prepare for a year to get the required score. I know many. This is what I'm saying, that Australia needs skilled people. Instead of relaxing rules for the skilled migrants, it is moving in a very different direction to put restrictions on people who want to come. Because now India is more, by the internet revolution, I think people are more aware and enlightened about the things. Now we can get what Australia was dreaming of getting, and now it has posed so many restrictions. This person can't do that, tourists cannot go to student visa, tourists cannot file permanent residency. Is that rule coming too?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with the stricter rules. I think from watching the clients, if it's not a rule to have a certain amount of money to come on a student visa, then a person comes who doesn't have the money. It's a very expensive place, Australia. So if you don't have all these silly little rules, it's not actually good for the student themselves. So I think a lot of these rules are quite, I don't know.
You think these rules are apt?
I think
and they
they're
should come
apt.
into action.
I think what possibly could be improved is the way they're implemented.
That's a very good suggestion.
Yeah, I think you'll find I've read some of my clients' refusal letters, and some of them are sort of a cut and paste from another one they've refused. So whether they've got, I don't know I think the rule, it's not so much the rules. I think the rules are the right idea, that maybe in some ways they are implemented and viewed is not quite right.
Do you think the quality of students has improved?
I think it has. Certainly from my days when I first started, 20 years ago, I think the cohort of students has improved.
It has.
But I assume that's the world has got smaller across the board in that time. With the internet and everything else, you can be more worldly by sitting in a lounge room. Whereas back 20 years ago, I don't think many people were very worldly if they were just sitting in their lounge room, I think.
Do you think migration industry is becoming more lucrative?
No.
As compared to past? Or it was lucrative back in the times when you started?
Lucrative. There's certainly a lot of demand, but business in Australia is difficult.
So with more and more people getting into this industry, do you think the
the
quality
numbers
of work...
of migration agents doesn't really change much. It doesn't increase a great deal each year. There's only about, I think there's 4,000, so I must look that up. There's only about 4,000 of us licensed across Australia.
It's still huge for the Australian population and the number of migrants that come here. 4,000 is a huge number.
Is it?
It is.
Well, we have 200,000 or whatever coming in each year, so it's not really 4,000 to 200,000 is not a great deal, is it? The biggest problem with the immigration industry is the people who are giving advice who are not licensed.
Yeah,
I think there's enough trouble with advice from licensed people, let alone, but they have all these unlicensed ones, people who don't have the education or think they do. That's frightening. And I get a lot of clients who have been given advice by people
unlicensed
who
ones.
don't have a license to give advice and then get refused, and then they find out all these things they've done.
Yeah,
Which is
Matthew,
terrible.
what we will do with those people who are licensed, qualified, but they don't implement the rules properly and they don't play by the books? What do we?
But there's a whole lot of rules for that. There's a whole governing body that looks after that. No, we're pretty highly governed. That's not the problem. I think the problem. I really, I'm going to get shot for saying this, but I can't believe that there's so many unlicensed or people who are not allowed to give advice, giving advice, and you see it all the time.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that guy in the pub giving tax advice when he's a plumber or something. It's frightening.
Yeah, and also Matthew, with the increasing number of migration consultants coming into the profession, do you think there is a possibility that the cheap competition threats will be increasing?
Don't know what you mean by that.
I mean to say, for example, the survival system for the migration consultants in the industry.
Do you think it'll be a rush to the bottom?
Absolutely, that was my question.
No, because it costs. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there's, in every industry, there's a tiering. Some people work from their front room at home, 40 k's out from the city, and they have a certain price because they're there. They don't have the costs, and they will be at a certain price. And there's some people in a large law firm or whatever that's got to have a certain cost because they have a whole lot of infrastructure around them.
Yeah.
So I think there's different costs. There's different ways of pricing your product.
Yeah, people come to us sometimes randomly. I can give you a few examples. People come and they say, for example, there is a situation of a person for change of circumstances in any particular visa. If he taps agent A, he has a very different opinion and a perspective to go through with his things. B has a different opinion, C has a different one, and the prices are also different. Now the person whose circumstances have changed, that person is going to go for the cheap one. Maybe that advice is not the best one. So is there something that will come to cap this also? The, what should I call, malicious practices? Maybe this is a legal term to go for that?
I don't think there's any malicious practice. I think what you're talking about is the difference between Aldi prices and Woolworths prices. There's always a different.
No, I'm saying prices are different, right? And the product quality is also different. Same. If you buy from Aldi, Woolies or Coles, quality is also different. Similarly, I'm saying for one particular situation, 3 agents have to offer 3 kinds of advices. So is there any scrutiny or a cap that can go on that people cannot go beyond those boundaries to allure people into to become their clients? And also
you mean in advertising and stuff like that, where people market saying outrageous things?
Yep, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
They do.
In every business, people are doing that. But as a migrant, no matter a person has done a PhD degree from his or her own country, but that person does not know ABC of this country, right? He is as naive as an educated person, uneducated one, right? So what can be done that they are not harmed by the cheap practices? What your experience speaks from the past 24 years, you might have seen the industry going sideways.
I've never seen. Isn't it funny you asked that question? I've never seen someone their life being ruined or their immigration opportunities being ruined by getting advice from a migration agent. I've never seen it.
But I have listened opposite things. I have heard,
right.
I know live examples of people whose lives have been ruined by the advice of the migration consultants over the ages, over the period.
Because I do a fair few of AAT cases where you fight refusals in a tribunal, and I'd say the 30% of those cases are where the person has been given advice by a unlicensed person. a
Maybe-
person who doesn't have
maybe-
the right to give the advice.
Maybe when the person gets affected, he or she is not that honest to tell people like us that what they did wrongly. Maybe
Yeah.
that's also a situation.
yeah.
But most
And I know with my profession, I know I get a lot of agents ringing me to give them advice on stuff. So I know that when you are licensed, you do try pretty hard to find out the answer if you don't know it.
yeah, that's the actually way. That's the way
Yeah.
to move on in any kind of profession.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Matthew, I've seen more in the society where people say that the migration industry is very polluted. Ethics level, it is getting polluted, and people have lost their trust in this industry.
Is that right? It's a shame to hear.
I'm very sorry to bring up this point, but see, this is what we are discussing in the podcast because a lot of migrants from all over the world would be viewing these conversations, and this is what people say very vocally and standing anywhere and in any social event, in community, in gatherings, in even 4 or 5 friends discussing, and you will see they would be just calling names to one of the agent or the second agent or the third agent. Why this industry has seen this much dip?
Don't know. I've noticed. I don't think there's been a dip. I don't know, because there's a lot of unlicensed people. There are education agents who give migration advice who aren't allowed to because they're not licensed. There's a lot of people offshore giving migration advice, and you don't have to be licensed offshore because our laws don't carry over the borders of the country. So people will be getting advice from all sorts of places that wouldn't necessarily be from a licensed agent.
All right. Do you think, Matthew, that people needs to be more educated and more enlightened about how they should use the system? If you see the Home Affairs website, it is very comprehensive, but
I find all the little loopholes that you hear of aren't found by migration agents. They're usually found by our clients.
Yeah.
So I think the clients are fairly versed on.
Have you ever felt in these 24 years any person came to you and said, oh, so and so agent told me to do this, and now see, what should I do? My age is gone, my points, I am lagging behind on my point system. You know, anybody came, I don't want you to name, but I
can't recall any of them following an agent's advice and something going horribly wrong. But with the advice, there's nothing's terribly clear cut when it comes to, a lot of things are not clear cut with immigration. With all the rule changes, that can make a big difference. Person might have told you needed 6 in each equivalency to go for a visa. Well, they might change the rules 2 months later, so if the person is still relying on that advice of 2 months ago, it might be the wrong advice. And also, there's lots of layers of laws in immigration. You know, you start out with the Act, and then there's regulations, and then there's precedents set by the courts, and then there's policy. You know, the regulations might say 2 + 2 = 4, but the policy might say we'll allow 5. So there's lots of layers. So when you give advice on a lot of the things that happen a lot of people, or things people have got themselves into, there might not be a black and white answer to what's going to happen, because there could be lots of ways, and it also depends on how the case officer determines.
Absolutely.
And because the case officer is not a migration agent, not a lawyer, he's possibly done a little course on a particular visa. He gets given these PAM documents, little cheat sheets to follow to give his policy and what the department's trying to do with these visas. So he might not be a complete expert on the matter either. So he might be leaning a policy way and not the law way, whatever. So it's sometimes not.
It is very unpredictable.
Yeah, it can be unpredictable. Correct.
Yeah. And from your talks, what I can infer is, if it is the fault of some migration consultant or an unlicensed migration consultant, it is the fault of a client also not interpreting the things in the right manner, and also looking at the advice that he got a year before.
Correct.
And so many rules change, and then he keeps saying like, oh, that agent ruined my life, instead of educating himself. There is peer pressure in the communities.
Oh, definitely.
That also, there are so many people who are capable of finishing their bachelor's degrees or master's degrees. When they come here, they are very intelligent, but due to peer pressure, they go to some courses which their peers are already doing, just to have company in the class.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Living together, working like 20 hours in a day, and then spending, enjoying the big brands and other things, and later on they say, oh, that migration agent told me this, do this course, you'll get your PR, and I'm not getting it. Do you think the clients are equally responsible in that
hear that a lot. I get a lot of clients who've been told by an education agent to do this course. Now that, I suspect that's because they're getting a larger com for that course than the other course.
Money makes the mayor go everywhere.
Correct. Yeah. And everyone's got to feed their family, but I always remember I had a whole pile of clients come in that were saying, why couldn't they become teachers after doing this course that they'd been sold, because it was a Master of Education. And the agent must have maybe didn't say anything, or maybe did say something, but they all thought they're going to be teachers at the end of it. Because you don't become a teacher at the end of a Master's of Education. You become a teacher at the end of a Master's of Teaching.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is happening, Matthew. This is happening in the world. Now, the difference is, instead of playing the blame game, clients need to be well aware what's going on.
But you've got to give it to the...
due diligence is important.
Yeah, you've got to give it to the immigration department. When I first started, their website was a joke, but now it's pretty good.
No, it's very comprehensive.
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of agents would use it as their first port of call. Not that they should, but I assume they would. Yeah.
Yes. Matthew, I have another question about skilled migration. What definition of skilled migration you have in your mind? What kind of skilled workers Australia is looking for? Tradies?
Or anything where there's a job.
But when people come, they don't have jobs. How they define skilled people?
Well, they do an enormous amount of research on what is missing in the employment market. And they go out to all the industries and they find out who's short, and they look at lots of engineers. We don't seem to have enough engineers, and you can see that coming out of the university. There's not the numbers that used to. You can see that in job adverts on Seek. There's a lot of engineer jobs. Same as metal fabricators. There's a lot of trades that there's just not enough people, and not enough licensed or trained people in those fields. So yeah, they're trying to bring that type of person in.
Do you think they need more people in construction?
Oh yeah, certainly in civil.
What is that civil construction diploma conundrum that is wavering here and there in the society? I hear from here, there, that reel, that podcast, everybody is talking about civil construction course. What is that conundrum?
I don't know what you're talking about, but to be an engineer, you need to have done a bachelor's, a 4-year bachelor's. So anything else, you're not going to be an engineer. And if your country degree isn't recognised, you're not going to be an engineer either. So that's mostly what you're talking about, because a lot of countries have a 3-year bachelor's degree for engineering, which is actually only an associate degree, so it's not actually what we would recognise as a bachelor degree in engineering.
That I understand.
So that's mostly what they're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have listened from many people that I know, and also watching and following the immigration news, that there came once a fashion in 2023 that people were being advised to go to civil construction diplomas.
Yep.
And now, as a result of more population into civil construction, now the point system in that industry has gone up in the immigration files. So now there is a big conundrum, because there are like 20-30% of the migrant community who left health sciences, IT, accounting, aged care, and this, that, and then all went into civil construction. This is a big conundrum here.
It's hard to tell whether that would have been, whether their pathway would have been affected, because there hasn't really been any picks in the last year in the skilled program. Because don't forget, they dropped the quota by 75% for the 190s and 491s.
Yeah.
They didn't do any picks for 189 for ages. I think they did one today or yesterday, I think, and they did
189 round.
And I don't know how many they picked and whether there was what numbers they were or who they picked. I didn't get any picks of my clients, but so it's a bit of a funny year.
And a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah, there's been a lot of ups and downs over this year, so it's all going to be a bit different next year, and you might find there's enormous demand for the engineer, or for the civil, or people who are trained in something in civil engineering or civil construction.
I sometimes feel how the migration consultants or the educational consultants come to know about these trends. Do immigration does some webinars, seminars, or they issue some letters, or they issue some
Trends
literature, brochures? How they come to know about what is going to be in the trend, and they start guiding the migrants, or it is their intuition?
Well, no. But as a licensed agent, you get lots of feedback about where the industry is going. So you usually hear it, but with the rule changes, the government doesn't like to give too much warning, depending on the type of rule change. But they don't like to give too much warning, because then there's usually too many applications made leading up to the expiry of something, and they can't handle the
like every tourist is going for student visa before July 1. Though they don't need it, or they are eligible,
yeah, but
or not.
that's a fair bit of notice, really. What's that? That's a two-week notice, and that's ample, because if you were in the process of getting a student visa, because it takes a while to go through all these visas, because you need to get a COE, and you need to do this, you need to do that, and your English, and rustle up the money for it, and make sure you've got the evidence of the money for the student visa, everything else. All that takes a while. So 2 weeks is ample to give notice to the people who are already in the process of getting going for the visa. But for someone who hasn't started the process, there's not enough time, and that's most probably how it should be.
Here the problem is again, they don't have time, but they will go to the agents who will tell them, or they will show the rosy dreams, yes you can, and they will be minting money out of their hands, and then they will be going to the English centers where they are teaching English for migrants, and they will say, oh, I have 2 weeks, I have 1 week, I'm giving the exam tomorrow, and the teacher very well knows they can't get through, but this is all, money making business, and it sometimes, it sometimes shakes people who are in those businesses. It happens with you also, when people come, okay, I'm left with 2 weeks, I want to do this visa. You clearly know that it is not possible. I'm very sure you would be saying not possible, right? But every consultant is not going to say the same thing. This industry is again on those reels that I was talking, like it's reeling down, not reeling up, it's reeling down.
Do you think? I don't know. I would have thought the migration industry is becoming a bit more sophisticated, a little bit more. I think with a number of people being in it for a number of years, it's become more, I think, better than it certainly was 20 years ago.
As a migration consultant, you say it's becoming sophisticated. If we go,
it's improved. It's got most probably a long way to go, but it's improved dramatically.
Yeah.
I think just in like the MIA, just our governing body, our membership body is improved out of sight in 20 years.
Yeah. For a common man, it is becoming complex. And if we go into English, complex and sophisticated mean same thing. So do we need to do that comparison and saying, you say sophisticated, I say it's complex, it is the same thing.
I just mean it's a little bit more polished than it possibly was 20 years ago. I think
It is?
Yeah.
You get better, you are getting more qualitative a percentage of people from different countries of the world, educated,
Possibly, yeah.
literate,
Yeah,
literate population.
yeah. Well, I think everyone's a bit more aware of what the rules are.
Earlier
around
they
the
were
world.
not.
No, but the most probably the rules are more complicated now, so they have to be a little bit more educated.
How you used to deal with those people, those who were not even able to bring 4.5 bands in their first or second attempts in IELTS, because PTE is a new fashion now, but earlier it was only IELTS. How you were dealing with those people who were not even able to express what they're looking for, which kind of advice they're looking for? What were the impediments at that time?
Oh, there was a lot. It was no different than now. It was English. It was understanding the rules. It was, but back then you could apply for a visa. See, now you can't. You've got to get picked for all these skilled visas.
You had translators in your offices?
No.
And you were able to understand them?
Yeah.
And they were able to understand
Yes.
you? Don't you think the migration consultants can become really good psychologists also, counselors?
Counsellors. Don't know.
Have you ever felt that you have been doing counseling for many of your clients?
Yes.
Yeah?
My main one that I counsel my clients on is that we all know PR is important and they're all very keen to get it, but you can't lose sight of your career, because once you've got PR, you need a job to pay for all the costs. Australia's a expensive place, and you need to have your job, so don't lose sight of your career. I've seen a lot of people lose sight of their career and change careers to get PR and then can't
They never come back.
ever come back.
Do you have anything to say to those people?
Well, it's just a shame they didn't stick by their career, but maybe they wanted PR more than their career.
Yeah.
But it's an expensive place, Australia, so you need to have a good job.
Yeah. And Matthew, there is another thing that is going on. It's a bit deviating question from your industry, but you might have dealt with those people, that when people come here, they just passed their 12th grade, most of them. They come here, they do 1 or 2 diplomas and they get the PR pathway. It was easier earlier.
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, 1 diploma and they're on the pathway, and now it's like 1 or 2 degrees and then there is a pathway. This is the difference, right?
Well, no, it's going to be heading to more work. I think it's going to be heading more towards the way of work.
Way of work,
So
all
you
right.
do a bachelor's in an in-demand industry and then go and get a job. And then after a couple of years, you better get PR once you've worked in that job.
Yeah,
Which is always, I would imagine, the plan of the government.
yeah.
But they most really didn't set the rules up quite like that. But that's certainly the way it's going, and so it should. It's better for everyone.
Yeah, I have a very associated, I can say the word, question on it. That's why I said it is a deviating one. They come here, they finish whatever they came for, and then they got married. I'm talking from the past, 20 years before or 15 years before. Then they get married. The girl gets married to a guy who is a permanent resident of Australia. They never see what is the qualification, what is the work he or she does, right? And then the girl comes here and they get settled. Then after 15 years, the situations changed. Girls started venturing out from many countries. They were coming earlier also, but very few. And then girls, there are many conservative societies in the Oriental culture, right? So parents don't want their girls to go alone in the world. They get married, maybe contract marriage or paper marriage or real marriage. My question is on the real marriage. They come, they get settled, girl is studying, guy is working day and night, paying the fees. PR, sometimes the PR comes, they both are permanent residents, and the girl say, you are not worthy of me, and she runs away to someone else, right? He was worthy when he was paying the fees, and vice versa. It happens to both girls and boys. This was the real marriage scenario, which is very devastating. But on the contract marriage, what happens is, a person pays the fees, file goes in, because now the files take long period of time. Girls ditch boys, boys ditch girls because of that thing. Have you ever encountered these cases?
Well, I wouldn't be privy to all the private stuff like that. Most of my clients wouldn't tell me, even if they were having troubles at home.
But they would have told you of change of circumstances. They don't want the spouse in the file, or they want to add another person in the file. Yeah.
Yes.
And it happens often?
Yeah, no, not often.
Not often.
Not often. Not when they're changing their circumstances, no.
Yeah. But in the society, people say these things that earlier they were real marriages, then the contract marriages started coming up. And this tragedy, this is the tragedy. How this can be solved, Matthew? As you said, you have been look, the consultant is always a counselor.
Yep.
He's not being paid as a counselor, but he is a counselor, right? So what suggestion you have to make for those people who would be listening to this podcast and who would be looking forward for more information to come to any foreign country, what they should not do?
Well, because I think that's easy. It's like going to any country. You just got to follow the rules of the country.
Yeah, on personal grounds. Should they marry before getting their PR, or they should wait, get their permanent residency, and then they look for the life partner, or they should keep ruining two families?
Most of my clients get married at the end of their study. So they might have a boyfriend or a long-term girlfriend or whatever during their study, but then when it's all finished, they'll then get married, usually.
So you have been getting the ethical customers, I must say.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have thought, but I'd look at an Indian couple and I wouldn't immediately assume that it was that it was a contract sort of marriage or a marriage set up for a visa purpose. I wouldn't have necessarily jumped to that conclusion.
Yeah. And
because love moves in many different forms.
Unfortunately, this is true to some extent, right? Because of the cases that we encounter like in the society, we come to know. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
If that was happening, I would imagine it would have happened more 20 years ago than it does today.
Yeah, today people are smart.
I think things have changed a lot in 20 years.
Yeah, what I feel is 20 years ago this was a tragedy.
Yeah, I think girl power has that whole thing has changed dramatically in 20 years. So I don't think the girl being looked after by his father and married off to some guy to help her to come out to Australia wouldn't be, even in a short period of 20 years, has changed dramatically. I don't think there'd be the numbers now
in some parts of the conservative societies, it still exists.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't come across
I know people, Matthew, whose spouses cannot interpret even a single sentence of English, and the girl is doing master's degree, and vice versa. So what is their future? Their future is bleak 100%. But till PR, there are certain girls and boys who come from morally strong, ethical families. They don't want to ruin them till they get their permanent residency. After that, the scenario changes. And it is very tragic, and these examples are very common here in this country, because most of the people enter this country on education basis as compared to the other part of the Western world.
Is that right? Right.
Yeah, because other part, most of them enter through marriage or by boats, by crossing borders.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In Australia, these scenarios are not very common.
Yeah, true.
Yeah? And very less illegal immigrants live in this country.
Well, we have a lot of people trying to get in by flying in. So we have a lot of people who fly and then claim that they are
vulnerable.
Yeah, well, they need protection of some sort, and the government's trying to work on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a sort of the refugee category of people
protection visas, yeah.
Yeah. But when you hear about the countries like America, Canada, England, or some European countries like Germany, there are people who have entered through illegal ways and they are still illegal immigrants. Some of them are living in the jails from the past 10, 15, 20 years.
Being an island makes it a bit different.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So at least
We
this
certainly
scenario
we certainly have overstayers, but we don't, because I think people sometimes call them illegals, but they're not really illegals. They're just overstayers. They've been immigration cleared.
misguided.
Well, they've been immigration cleared on the way in, but then they might have overstayed whatever visa they've had.
Yeah, there are many ignorant folks, but with the technology and internet advancing, now people know what they are into. Like you said, they're becoming smarter. Yes, Australia is getting smarter immigrants now. Do you think migration industry will have problems in the times to come if they start doing their e-visas themselves?
Don't know. I think we're a long way off that, with everything being that way.
You know any quitter who was going through the legal process of migration, and one day he or she comes and tells you, enough is enough. I'm going back.
And that is an incredible question, because I, in my 24 years, have never ever had a person who's got 3/4 of the way or halfway or 9/10 of the way and gone, no, I'm going to go home. Not one.
Not even a single one.
Not one, which is incredible when you think about it. Not one. They can be, all things could have gone wrong, and they're still going to go home, which is quite.
So that's why we are proud of Australia. And
well, I suppose that's why I talk about immigration to Australia in a certain way, because I've watched. No one's given up.
Yeah.
And whereas I have a lot of clients who got to Canada but then left and have gone back home.
Yeah.
A lot of clients, and that's right through, not only just now but right back 20 years ago when I was holding exhibitions. We'd get a lot of people who'd already got Canadian PR and they were looking for Australian.
Yeah. And
so
it's weather also that is attracting people
well,
to Australia.
I assume it's something like that. It's not freezing like some parts of Canada, possibly. Larger, higher wage rates than Canada and America, I assume.
Yeah.
I assume is the reason.
And also, Matthew, as far as Australian immigration industry is concerned, you said that they need more skilled workers. That's why the restrictions are coming into action. I have a very different question on this. Do you think these restrictions, I asked you this question in the beginning also, but we started discussing something else. Do you think these restrictions will pause, what should I call, the exodus of people from the conservative societies, less richer societies, the people who sell their homes or their lands, agricultural lands, to come to this country to get education? They will move away from Australia and they will start knocking New Zealand doors.
Possibly. I don't know.
People.
I don't really keep track of other countries because there's so much demand to Australia. But I've always thought that the main person who comes to Australia has to come from a certain level of wealth, because they have to be fairly well educated before they get here.
Yeah.
And it's an expensive process to get educated here. So it's a person that wouldn't necessarily be selling up all their wares to be able to pay for their kids' education. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah. If Australia is such a good education destination, why any Australian university could not be ranked in first 10 in the world?
Yes. But the education is only one
factor. Right. Well, why there is no ranking, first 10 ranking for the Australian universities? I have personal experience. There are very good universities here. Why?
I think it's money.
Money?
Yeah, I'm assuming like hotels are ranked ranked by how many TVs in the room and, you know, all this sort of stuff. Well, I'm assuming universities are ranked by research. And if you have no money in the country, and Australia doesn't have the money to put 25 million people, we don't have the money to put into research in universities. It's not like Harvard that's got billions of dollars and a fund to do research, or the other universities in America or in England. We don't have anywhere near that money. I doubt there'd be any money put into research. So therefore, I assume that's why they're not rated.
That might be the reason.
I think the education of the lecturers wouldn't be any different. I think in the worldwide universities. But certainly the research would be very different, because research would be a really expensive thing to do. We don't have the money here. You know, no one's pouring money. The government's certainly not pouring money into it. And we don't have the wealth here to pour money. We don't have the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks and all the rest of it. We've got a few guys over in Western Australia, got a few bucks, but I don't think they're pouring it into research.
But being living here, seeing the universities and the systems, I can very certainly make this statement that no matter Australian universities does not rank in first 10, but there are people who are educated in the world's best universities are looking and struggling or striving to get into Australia through skilled migration. Yeah, you agree to that?
Yes.
So there's a trend of that.
There always has been. You know, I've always had clients from all around the world. You know, Germany, United States, Canada. They're from everywhere.
It is. So, Matthew, it was a very nice conversation today.
Good to chat.
About Australian immigration industry
Correct.
and what has happened. Would you like to put up one message for the audience of In My Podcast show about how you foresee Australian immigration in the next 5 years?
Oh, I don't think there'll be lots and lots of rule changes. I think it's all about work. You need to get a job to get picked. And I think they'll most probably do that with the point system. That'll have something to do with being on a 482 visa will give you extra points, so you can actually get picked and not have to rely on the boss doing the 186. I think that's where it's going.
Matthew, have you ever wondered that Australian migration industry is trying to move on the pathway given by the American immigration industry? Sometimes I feel like the way the rules are changing and way the restrictions are being imposed.
No, look, it feels like it's becoming more of a lottery, like America, but no, I think we're stuck on this whole trying to find skilled.
So we are safe.
I think we're trying to find skilled people from all around the world. Whether the system is actually fulfilling that.
We are finding skilled workers, but we are not offering scholarships like American universities offer. Like you said, government is not pouring money into it.
We don't need to, scholarships are only to attract people, and you don't need anything to attract people. There's enough coming already, I think. Just have to work out how to get the rules set up so you get the skilled people coming.
Yeah, as true Australian, we should say that.
Yes.
Yeah, and let the history speaks
Correct.
The truth. Thank you, Matthew, for joining me today.
Thank you,
in the
Rasna.
podcast. Thank you so
Good
much.
to see you.
As an old adage goes, tough times never last, but tough people do. A time will come when you will also get the permanent residency of Australia. Stay tuned. Keep watching our podcast. Thank you so much.